Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Rianne Coulter, curator at the Effie McWilliam Gallery in Banbridge, and this exhibition is Nana Reid and Jared Dillon. Nana Reid was from Drogheda and Jared Dillon was from West Belfast, and this exhibition started in Drogheda in the Highlands Gallery, who are our cross-border partners. So we're delighted to welcome it to Banbridge. The exhibition really started with the idea of exploring Reid and Dillon's work through their friendship and looking at artists in the 1940s and 1950s in Ireland and the conditions under which they had to work and how they had to support each other through their friendships. And we have a number of wonderful works on loan from places like the National Gallery of Ireland and the Dillon Gallery in Dublin, and a lot of private collections. People have been very generous and lent their work. So the works come from all over Ireland, and there's a number of themes explored in the exhibition, one of which is their friendship and the times that Jared Dillon and Nana Reid spent working together in Drogheda and in Dublin and in Connemara in the west of Ireland. We also have a lot of images of the Boyne Valley and Drogheda that both artists painted when they were together. We have images of Monaster Boyce and Mellifont around the Boyne Valley again, and places that both artists would have visited, and they were very inspired by Celtic carvings and architecture there, and this is something which recurs in their work throughout the rest of their lives. We also then have a section which looks at the west of Ireland and Nana Reid when she went to visit Jared Dillon when he lived in Connemara, and the landscapes they painted there and the people. So it's a nice run through lots of their work. So do we want to look at particular paintings? And if we start here, this is a painting from the National Gallery of Ireland, and it's called Nana's Dream Castle. And it's a lovely picture in the context of the exhibition because it shows Jared Dillon here and Nana Reid both painting in the landscape. And it's a landscape that we know is from the Drogheda area. This building and the castle is a house near Drogheda that Nana Reid's family had associations with. It's obviously partly fantastical as well because you have the sun in this black sky, but it's a lovely image showing how they work together.
Were they friends for a long time?
They were friends, yes, they probably met in Dublin in the 1940s. We don't know exactly when, but they were both living in Dublin during the war period when Dublin was neutral, and a lot of artists, both from the north and from England, congregated in Dublin this period, and it was quite a bohemian atmosphere and quite fertile time for artists. So as far as we know, they met then and became friends then. Jared Dillon lived most of his life in London. He was a house painter. He was from a very working class background, and he made his living by being a house painter. But when he came back to Ireland in the summer, he would often stay with Nana Reid in Drogheda, and we have letters from him to his friends sent from Drogheda. We also then have some wonderful images that we know they both did in Drogheda. There's a great picture here, if you want to move to it. Mm-hmm. This is called A Picnic, and it's by Jared Dillon, and this is the first time it's ever been exhibited in public. We know this particularly because it was actually found in the back of a hot press in Drogheda. The gentleman who found it had bought a house that the Reids used to live in, and when he was taking the hot press apart, he found this image. And if you look at it, it's quite damaged. There's holes out of the image here, and there's some marks where there was obviously hot water pipes and that kind of thing, and it was obviously a much bigger picture as well. It's by Jared Dillon, and it's a scene of people having a picnic in Mornington, which is on the coast near Drogheda. So again, it's a nice painting that links them. We have here a large mural then that was in the Reid's pub, and Nana Reid's family were publicans in Drogheda, quite well known pub, and this is a mural that many people in Drogheda remember from that pub. And it's got scenes out the window of the port and the old abbey and many sites well known from Drogheda. You move on?
Yeah.
Both Nana Reid and Jared Dillon painted very normal scenes of everyday life in Drogheda and in Belfast. There's a lovely image here by Jared Dillon called Four Lovely Lassies, which is a scene from Belfast he had remembered from his childhood, or maybe going back and visiting the city. And you can see it's girls playing hopscotch, and he's used chalk just like the children would in the image. Then Nana had also, she painted people at everyday work, so this is an image called Tarring the Shed, where these workers are doing. There's something very normal and not something which is usually the subject of art. And it's quite unusual in Irish art for artists to paint urban scenes because the landscape was so popular. So it's wonderful to see these artists painting their own native towns and making them the subject of art. Sorry. This is a particularly interesting image by Jared Dillon. It's called Hands Across the Border, and I think it's very apt for this exhibition, which is a cross-border exhibition. It's actually a kind of a collage with wool. We call it tapestry, but if you look at it, you can see it's been made out of old jumpers and old, old clothing that's been unravelled and sewn together. And Dillon was a very inventive artist, and we believe that he actually just ran out of paint when he was in the west of Ireland. And in the 1940s or 50s, if you were in Connemara, there weren't too many shops nearby where you could buy good quality paint. So while he waited for supplies to come from Dublin, he started to just create whatever he had. And this is obviously drawing on Celtic imagery. And as we'll see further on in the exhibition, both artists sketched Munster Boyce and Mellifont and the high crosses and that kind of thing. So that's where that influence is coming from.
Yeah, as well as being a painter, he also did some set design and costume design for
he did some for the Abbey Theatre, particularly in Dublin. And and I think there's, you can imagine his work would make good theatre because it's very bold and colourful. And a lot of artists in that period did do things like theatre, partly to make some money and to get their work seen elsewhere. We also have in the exhibition some books which both artists illustrated, so that was another way of getting your work seen and of maybe making a few pence here and there. So they were always very adaptive, as you had to be.
It was impressive because at least Jared, he never had any sort of formal training. He just created it himself.
Yeah, maybe a few art classes here and there. We went to night classes for a while in Belfast, but you can see in his art as well there's quite a childlike quality to it, and it's very bold and bright and maybe lacks some of the academic training that other artists had. But I think that was a freedom to him. He wanted to reject that anyway. So I think that's part of why he has such a distinctive style. Nana Reid did train in both in Dublin and in London and in Paris, so she was coming from a very different background. But she too found her own voice and rejected a lot of her training and found her own way of painting, which of course is the most difficult thing for an artist, I think.
They both ended up sort of representing the country. I mean, and Nano, she represented Ireland at the Venice Biennale.
She did, yeah. We have a number of pictures here actually that were in Venice. This is an interesting one called the Forest Pool. And on the back it has the sticker from the Venice Biennale in 1950. It was the first time that Ireland had ever represented, or ever been represented at the Venice Biennale, and it was represented by two women, Nana Reid and Nora McGuinness. That was very unusual at the time. And well, from Nana Reid's work, there doesn't seem to be any particular theme. It's just a selection of works at the time. And it did get both artists quite a lot of press, but many of the Italian critics thought that Nana was a man, because if you think of an Italian, a name beginning and end would be a man. So her work was maybe misunderstood, partly from that. Jared then, he really, I suppose he became more famous in his own lifetime, and near the end of his life he was beginning to make some money out of his art. He died very young, unfortunately, in 1971. Of a heart attack, and so I suppose he didn't get to appreciate his fame as much as he could have. His works are now worth a lot of money and really very appreciated. So it's
interesting because although he was getting recognised in his own lifetime, when he died, he wanted to be buried in an unmarked grave.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure what the story behind that was actually. I mean, he was buried back in Belfast, which even was quite unusual because he didn't have much of he had a hate-love relationship with Belfast, I think. He would always come back and see his family, but he felt there was more freedom in London and maybe, even in Belfast. He was very felt very strongly about the Troubles and was quite a Republican background. And, he wrote letters to the Irish Times and things saying that he wasn't going to show his work until the situation improved. I think both Nana Reid and Jared Dillon were very strong characters and they had very set opinions. Nana Reid hated the fact that the megalithic tombs around the Boyne Valley, like Newgrange and Noth and Doath, were being excavated. She didn't like that idea of opening up, the archaeological sites. She liked the mystery to them. So she too wrote letters to the local papers complaining. And you can imagine they both would have, kept, kind of wound each other up and kept each other going about their particular pet hates. And I think that was part of